The following is a presentation of the 2025-2026 rules changes, editorial revisions, and points of emphasis as approved by the National Federation of High Schools. This presentation is brought to you by the International Association of Approved Basketball Officials, Incorporated, or IBO. IBO is a nonprofit service and professional organization managed by and for basketball officials. Since 1921, IBO has been the worldwide leader in recruiting and training basketball officials and has grown to a network spanning 41 U.S. states and 6 foreign countries with over 16,000 members. IBO's stated purposes are to educate, train, develop, and provide continuous instruction for basketball officials, to promote the welfare of the game of basketball to players, coaches, administrators, and officials, to have an adequate number of thoroughly trained and capable officials available at all times, to maintain the highest standard of basketball officiating, and to encourage the spirit of fair play and sportsmanship. First, we will address the National Federation of High Schools rules changes. Goaltending. Rules change. The NFHS has adopted some key changes to the goaltending rule. There are now 3 distinct definitions of goaltending. Beginning this season, a goaltending violation may only be committed by a defensive player. On a field goal try, if a defensive player touches the ball during a try or tap for a goal while the ball is in its downward flight, entirely above the basket ring level, has the possibility of entering the basket in flight, and is not touching the basket cylinder, it is a goaltending violation. The second definition applies to free throw attempts. Once again, the violation may only be committed by a defensive player. However, with a free throw attempt, if the ball is touched at any time after it is released and until it reaches the ring, it is considered goaltending, even if the ball is touched when it's below the ring level. It should be noted that goaltending a free throw is also a direct technical charged to the offending player. Beginning this season, there is a third distinct definition of goaltending. The NFHS has adopted language to address goaltending when a try is touched by a defensive player after it contacts the backboard. For the purpose of this rule, when the ball contacts the backboard, it is considered to be on its downward flight. In this case, it is only a goaltending violation when a player touches a try that still has the possibility of entering the basket. It should also be noted that, in the same fashion as the NCAA men's rule, the rule only applies if any part of the ball is above ring level when the defender contacts the ball. In this play, white number 15 blocks the shot attempt after the ball contacts the backboard. Since at least some part of the ball was above ring level, the try had a chance to enter the basket, and according to the rule change, a ball that has contacted the backboard is considered to be on its downward flight. This is a goaltending violation. Bench personnel. Rules change. An important change has been made regarding player status during timeouts. Beginning this season, the 5 players who are legally in the game will now be considered bench personnel during a timeout. This change closes the loophole in the previous rule where if one of the 5 players were charged with a technical foul during the timeout, the head coach was not charged with an indirect technical foul. This also alleviates the officials from having to make a determination of which team members are players and which are bench personnel. Beginning this season, if a player is charged with a technical foul during a timeout, the coach will also be charged with an indirect technical foul, just as they would be if any other bench personnel were charged with a technical foul during a timeout or intermission. By rule, the timeout begins after the official reports the timeout to the scorer and then signals the timer to start the timeout period. If an official forgets to signal to start the clock, the timeout begins as soon as the timer starts the clock. Let's clarify this with 2 play situations. After a timeout is granted, but before the official directs the timer to start the timeout interval, A3 makes a disrespectful comment to an official while walking toward their bench area. How is this penalized? A3 is charged with a technical foul. But this foul is not charged indirectly to the head coach because the timeout had not officially begun. In contrast, after a timeout is reported and the timer is directed to start the timeout interval, A3 makes a disrespectful comment to an official while walking toward their bench area. How is this penalized in this situation? A3 is assessed a technical foul. Team A's head coach is also charged with an indirect technical foul. Their head coach loses their coaching box privileges for the remainder of the game. It should be noted that for the purposes of this rule, the 5 players in the game remain bench personnel until the ball becomes live after the timeout. The ball becomes live once the ball is placed at the disposal of a player for a free throw or a throw-in. Resuming play with throw-ins. Rules change. One of the most significant rule changes for the 2025-2026 season pertains to throw-in spots. This change does not apply to out-of-bounds violations. Officials will no longer need to rely on an imaginary trapezoid to determine the location of throw-in spots for fouls, violations, and other stoppages. Instead, throw-in locations will now be determined by using the three-point line as the reference. If the stoppage of play occurs on or within the three-point line, the designated spot will be on the nearest point on the end line, 3 feet outside the lane line. If the stoppage occurs outside the three-point line, the designated spot will be on the nearest sideline at the 28-foot mark. Please note that this rule change applies to both front court and back court throw-ins for anything other than out-of-bounds violations. Throw-in provisions. Rules change. Last season, the Rules Committee approved a change, making it a violation when a player purposely or deceitfully delays returning after legally going out of bounds and then becomes the first player to touch the ball after returning to the playing court. This season, the committee expanded the rule to include players executing a throw-in. Previously, this infraction would have resulted in a technical foul. Under the new rule, it will now be considered a violation. In this play, the thrower takes several steps along the end line before returning to the court. She is then the first player to touch the ball. This year, this would be considered a violation because an advantage was gained. The ball would be awarded to the opponents for a throw-in based on where the player illegally touched the ball on the court. In situations where no advantage is gained, when the thrower delays their return to the court, there is no penalty. Basket interference. Rules change. This next rule change addresses situations where a player slaps or strikes the backboard, causing the backboard or basket to vibrate while the ball is on or within either basket or is touching the backboard or within the cylinder. Beginning this season, this action will be considered basket interference. In previous years, this could have been ruled a player technical foul if the slap or strike was not a legitimate attempt to block the try. That language has now been removed from the player technical foul provisions. However, this does not imply that a technical foul cannot be assessed. If a player commits an unsporting act by striking the backboard, the rules governing unsporting technical fouls still apply. In this clip, the defender makes a legitimate attempt to block a try and slaps the backboard while the ball is in flight. This causes the backboard and ring to vibrate while the ball is on or within the basket, touching the backboard or in the cylinder. Beginning this season, this is a basket interference violation, and 2 points should be awarded to the offended team on this play. Keep in mind, it's not the slapping of the backboard that causes the violation. The violation is based on the fact that the backboard or ring is vibrating while the ball is on or within the basket, touching the backboard or within the cylinder. When a player slaps a backboard, the backboard and ring are considered to be vibrating. Next, we will address editorial revisions and other changes. Warning for delay. Editorial revision. This editorial revision clarifies that a warning for actions that delay the game is an administrative procedure initiated by an official. The warning is recorded in the scorebook by the scorer and reported to the head coach. The intent of this revision is to help officials recognize that a warning for delay is only necessary when the action delays the resumption of play. For example, in this picture, 2 players leave their marked lane spaces to congratulate a free thrower. This action alone does not warrant a warning unless the players cause a delay when the official is ready to administer the next free throw. Try for goal. Editorial revision. This change was approved prior to the 2024-25 season, but was mistakenly omitted from the NFHS casebook. The revised language was adopted to clarify what constitutes a try for goal and to assist officials in determining when a ball thrown from behind the three-point line should be considered a three-point try. The rule states that, for a thrown ball to be considered a three-point try, the ball must be thrown toward the team's own basket and must stay above the ring with a chance of going in the basket. In Casebook Play 5.2.1, Situation B, B1, who was standing behind the three-point arc, passes the ball toward the goal for a potential alley-oop dunk attempt. The pass goes directly into the basket without being touched by their teammate. Although the thrown ball was technically a pass, it meets the definition of a try because it was directed towards the player's own goal, remained above the ring, and had a chance to go in. Score 3 points for Team B in this scenario. In contrast, when there is no possibility of the ball entering the basket from above and a deflection causes the try to be successful, it is a 2-point goal. In this play, a player from behind the three-point line attempts a pass into the lane, which is deflected into the basket. Since the ball was below the basket when the deflection occurred, and the deflection is what caused the try to be successful, this would be a 2-point goal. It should be noted, it makes no difference if the deflection is caused by an offensive or defensive player. Jump ball administration. Editorial revision. In this editorial revision, the Rules Committee approved a change to clearly define that jump ball restrictions only apply to players positioned within 3 feet of the center restraining circle. When the official is ready and until the ball is tossed, non-jumpers shall not move into the center restraining circle within 3 feet or change position around the center restraining circle. Until the tossed ball is touched by one or both jumpers, non-jumpers shall not have either foot break the plane of the center restraining circle cylinder or take a position in any occupied space within 3 feet of the center restraining circle. Bench personnel entering the court. Editorial revision. Last season, the Rules Committee approved a change stating that an injured player must be directed to leave the game if a coach or bench personnel is beckoned or comes onto the court without being beckoned. This rule implies that in such situations, a coach is not required to be beckoned before entering the court. This created a contradiction with the bench technical foul rule. To resolve this, the NFHS has approved an editorial revision for the current season that eliminates the inconsistency and clarifies that a technical foul is not supported by rule when a coach enters without being beckoned to attend an injured player. Team technical. Editorial revision. Beginning this season, a team will be assessed a technical foul when they fail to have all players return to the court at approximately the same time following a timeout, intermission, or substitution process. This editorial revision was approved to address a long-standing interpretation that previously allowed a player in the bench area to re-enter the court during a live ball without penalty after confusion arose following a lengthy substitution process. In this casebook play, only 4 Team A players are on the court when the coach realizes A5 should be in the game. A5 then enters the court during a live ball. Beginning this season, if this situation occurs, a team technical foul will be assessed. In this situation, it would be too difficult for officials to determine if the player entering the court was previously in the game. Therefore, this change requires the player to report to the scorer and wait for the next opportunity to be beckoned into the game. Continuous motion. Other change. This season, the NFHS has approved a new casebook play that clarifies the rule on continuous motion. In recent years, other levels of play have applied different interpretations of what constitutes continuous motion and when a player is considered to be in the act of shooting. According to the new clarification, a try begins when a player initiates the habitual motion that precedes the release of the ball. If a player ends a dribble and is stepping or pivoting toward the basket when they are fouled, the player should be considered in the act of shooting, provided they continue the motion and release the ball on a try. In this clip, the offensive player is on a fast break when the defender is charged with a blocking foul. The ball handler has ended their dribble and is stepping when they are fouled by the defender. The ball handler completes the customary arm and foot movement to complete the try. Continuous motion applies in this play, and the goal should count. In this second clip, the ball handler ends the dribble with their back to the basket. The ball handler is pivoting when the defensive player commits a foul. The ball handler completes the pivot and tries for goal. Continuous motion also applies in this play, and 2 free throws should be awarded since the foul occurred during an unsuccessful try for goal. Team control. Other change. The NFHS has approved a new casebook play that extends the application of the team control rule to help determine which team should receive the ball when an inadvertent whistle occurs during a loose ball. In this play, a throw-in pass is deflected and the ball is loose when an official inadvertently sounds the whistle. This clarification ensures that the alternating possession arrow will not be needed to determine how to resume play. In this situation, the ball will be awarded back to Team A based on the location of the ball when the inadvertent whistle occurred. In addition, this casebook play outlines that an official needs definite knowledge of any time that elapses if they are going to take time off the clock. Since there is no rules-based count that would take place during the loose ball, the officials would not have any definite knowledge and therefore no rule support to take time off the clock. Dribble. Other change. The current NFHS rules book does not provide a single definition of what constitutes a dribble. This year, the NFHS clarified in the casebook that a dribble begins when a player who is in control of the ball bats, throws, or pushes it to the floor and is then the first player to touch the ball after it returns from the floor. Officials often incorrectly rule a traveling violation as soon as a player lifts their pivot foot off the floor to start a dribble. The violation occurs only if the dribbler is the first to touch the ball after it returns from the floor. In this clip, a defensive player deflects the ball to the court. She then recovers the ball with both hands and throws the ball to the floor to start a dribble. This is a legal play. A player must be in control of the ball to start a dribble. When a player deflects the ball to the floor, they may legally recover the ball with one or both hands and begin a dribble. Officials often rule this an illegal dribble. Understanding the nuances of the dribble rule should help officials make accurate rulings on these types of plays. Held ball. Other change. This change clarifies the interpretation of hands in Rule 425 regarding held ball situations. It confirms that a held ball may be ruled regardless of whether one or both opponents have one or both hands on the ball. A held ball occurs when neither player can gain control of the ball without undue roughness, regardless of how many hands each player is using to attempt to gain control. Backcourt violation. Other change. This casebook play helps clarify the NFHS interpretation of where the ensuing throw-in should be awarded after a backcourt violation occurs. Part A of this play differs from the NCAA rule. Under NCAA rules, if a player steps on but not completely over the division line and commits a backcourt violation, the ball is awarded for a throw-in at the division line. In contrast, the NFHS interpretation awards the ball in the offended team's front court at the 28-foot mark on the sideline, closest to where the violation occurred. The National Federation of High Schools points of emphasis for the 2025-2026 season. Contact on the ball handler. Point of emphasis. Continued emphasis is placed on the consistent enforcement of illegal contact involving the ball handler. While hand checking remains a known concern, other forms of illegal contact must also be recognized and penalized. Defenders often use their hips, torsos, or other parts of the body to displace, redirect, or impede a ball handler's freedom of movement. Placing two hands or an extended arm bar on a player, placing and keeping a hand on, or contacting a player more than once all constitute a hand-checking foul when committed against a ball handler, as we see in these clips. Another aspect to this point of emphasis relates to end-of-game tactics. End-of-game tactics must be identified and addressed in accordance with the rules. Particular attention is required during late-game situations. Not all fouls committed in the closing moments of a contest are necessarily intentional. Determinations regarding intentional fouls must be based on the act itself, not on perceived intent or verbal instructions from the coaching staff. Directives, such as foul, red, or scramble, do not automatically make the resulting contact intentional. If the contact constitutes a legitimate attempt to play the ball or to defend an opponent, either on the ball or away from it, it should be adjudicated as a common foul. Standards for evaluating contact must remain consistent throughout the game, including in its final moments. The strategic intent of one team to stop the clock must be weighed against the opposing team's interest in allowing the clock to run. Conversely, contact that is excessive clearly removes an opponent's apparent advantage or does not constitute a legitimate basketball play should be classified as an intentional foul. Coaches must emphasize teaching players how to foul properly in end-of-game situations. In conjunction with this point of emphasis, the NFHS has approved an editorial revision that addresses a long-standing contradiction between the rules and a casebook interpretation. As stated in the NFHS casebook, fouling near the end of a game is an acceptable coaching and playing strategy to stop the clock. To further support this interpretation, the reference within the rules that prohibits fouling to stop the clock or keep it from starting has been eliminated. The Rules Committee has also approved a new casebook play to provide officials with guidance on ruling end-of-game contact. If a player makes a legitimate attempt to play the ball or the opponent when committing a foul, it should be ruled a common foul. Officials should also consistently apply the incidental contact rule. If the defender is unable to make illegal contact with the ball handler, officials must be prepared to rule the contact incidental and allow the clock to continue running. Let's watch a few videos that illustrate this change. In this clip, the defender in the red uniform makes a legitimate play on the ball, so the player is properly charged with a common foul. In this second clip, the defender is unable to keep a hand on the dribbler. The dribbler's freedom of movement was not otherwise inhibited. This is incidental contact. By ruling this a foul, it is unfair to the team that is ahead and wants the clock to continue to run. Officials need to consider the needs of both teams when ruling on end-of-game contact. In the last play, the defender does not make a legitimate play on the ball or player, causing excessive contact on the ball handler. This is an intentional personal foul and should be ruled as such. Bench decorum and communication. Point of emphasis. Ongoing concerns have been noted regarding bench decorum, improper communication with officials, and incidents involving player altercations. All team personnel, including coaching staff and bench players, are expected to uphold a standard of sportsmanship through disciplined behavior, clear expectations, and structured preparation. Bench decorum remains a significant point of emphasis. Officials are expected to take a proactive role in managing the behavior of coaches and bench personnel, particularly the conduct of head and assistant coaches. Rule 448, warning for coach and team conduct, should be applied early and consistently to prevent escalation and maintain control of the game. Effective communication between coaches and officials should be established before the contest and maintained throughout. A professional and respectful tone is expected. When reasonable rules-based inquiries are made by coaches, for example, can you watch the screening? A simple verbal acknowledgement or nonverbal gesture, such as a nod, is generally sufficient. Rules-based questions, such as, "What did my player do wrong on that illegal screen?" are appropriate and should receive a clear and informative response. These interactions support the educational purpose of the game. In contrast, rhetorical questions or comments not seeking clarification, such as, "What is it going to take to get a foul?" or "It's getting rough out there," do not require a response. The NFHS is concerned with coaches illegally entering the court during play. Rule 10.5 explains the privileges and restrictions for head coaches and bench personnel. Only the head coach is permitted to stand and provide instructions to players during live ball play. This communication must be delivered in a professional and sportsmanlike manner. All other personnel, including assistant coaches and team members not in the game, must remain seated, except during rule-allowed situations, for example, during timeouts or spontaneous reactions to exceptional play. This point of emphasis is not intended to restrict enthusiasm, but rather to preserve order and promote respect for the game. Adherence to coaching box boundaries is essential for maintaining both safety and fairness. An increasing number of incidents have involved coaches stepping onto the court during live play, creating potential safety concerns that must be addressed through proper rule enforcement. The head coach holds primary responsibility for the prevention and de-escalation of potential altercations. Proactive planning is expected, including the designation of specific duties for assistant coaches in the event of a fight. One assistant coach may be tasked with managing on-court players, while others may be assigned to control bench personnel. Such role assignments serve to prevent mass disqualifications and maintain order during disruptive incidents. Faking being fouled. Point of emphasis. In the previous season, the NFHS Basketball Rules Committee adopted Rule 449, warning for faking being fouled, to address unsporting acts in which players simulate illegal contact in an attempt to deceive officials and gain an unfair advantage. These actions include embellishing contact on block charge plays, simulating getting fouled during shooting attempts, or using movements such as a head bob to make it appear that a foul occurred. Such conduct compromises the integrity of the game and places undue influence on officiating decisions. The NFHS has identified 3 specific areas that officials should focus on: the head bob, the shooter faking, and the defensive flop. Faking being fouled by a dribbler. The head bob. This infraction occurs when a player in control of the ball simulates contact by quickly snapping their head backward. In such cases, the faking signal should be displayed immediately, accompanied by a simultaneous whistle. If this is the team's first offense, a team warning is issued. Since the infraction occurs while the team is in control of the ball, the offending team retains possession and is awarded a throw-in at one of the 4 designated spots in either the front court or back court, depending on the location of the warning. This is the same as last season. The NFHS has revised the interpretation for addressing situations where a shooter fakes being fouled. Beginning this season, if a shooter simulates being fouled, typically by falling to the floor without contact after releasing the ball, the faking signal should be displayed immediately. However, the whistle should now be withheld. Under last season's guidance, this action would have resulted in an immediate whistle. Now, play should only be stopped when one of the following occurs. The try is successful. The defensive team gains control of the ball. The offensive team secures a rebound but does not immediately attempt to score, or a dead ball situation occurs for any other reason. In this clip, the team in the black uniforms had not yet received a faking being fouled warning when the trail official signaled that the shooter faked being fouled after releasing the try. The officials correctly allowed play to continue, even when the offense secured control of the rebound. When the defensive team finally secured control of the ball, the officials should have stopped play to assess the warning. If this had been the team's second faking being fouled infraction, they would be charged with a technical foul. It should also be noted that the faking being fouled signal should only be done once, not multiple times as shown in this clip, as it gives the appearance that the official is signaling for the player to get up off the floor. Furthermore, it should also be noted that if the team in the black jerseys had been previously warned for faking being fouled when this play occurred, officials would sound the whistle immediately and assess the technical foul penalty. Defensive flop. If a defensive player simulates being fouled, such as by falling to the floor without contact, the faking being fouled signal should be displayed immediately, but no whistle should be sounded. Play should be stopped only when one of the following occurs. the try is successful. The defensive team gains control of the ball. The offensive team secures a rebound but does not immediately attempt to score. Or a dead ball situation occurs for any other reason. In this clip, the defensive player fakes being fouled in the lane area in an attempt to fool the official into ruling a player control foul. Once the try is successful, officials should stop play and either assess the warning if it was the first infraction or the technical foul if it was the team's second infraction. Let's review. First, we will look at flopping by an offensive player on the first infraction. When a ball handler fakes being fouled, the official must sound the whistle immediately. When a shooter fakes being fouled and the try is not successful, officials should withhold the whistle until the offensive team secures a rebound and stops trying to score. The defensive team gains control of the ball. Or a dead ball situation occurs for any other reason. In both cases, play is resumed at the point of interruption, which is a throw-in for the team who had control of the ball when the infraction occurred, from one of the 8 applicable throw-in spots used for all stoppages, except out-of-bounds violations, which are administered at the spot where the ball went out of bounds. When a shooter fakes being fouled and the try is successful, officials should withhold the whistle until immediately after the goal. Once again, play is resumed at the point of interruption, which is an inline throw-in for the defensive team with the privilege of moving along the end line. If a team's second infraction is by an offensive player, play must be stopped immediately. A team technical is assessed, and the offended team is awarded 2 free throws with the lane spaces cleared, plus the ball for a division line throw-in opposite the table. Now let's look at flopping by the defensive player on the first infraction. When a defensive player fakes being fouled, officials should withhold the whistle until the offensive team scores, which could include repeated attempts at the basket, or until the offending team gains control of the ball or the ball becomes dead. In both instances, play is resumed at the point of interruption. If a goal is scored, the opponents are awarded a throw-in with the privilege of moving along the end line. Otherwise, play is resumed using one of the 8 applicable throw-in spots for all stoppages, except out-of-bounds violations, which are administered at the spot where the ball went out of bounds. It should be noted that there will be times when it's appropriate for officials to stop play immediately, such as when there is no scoring play in progress, the flop occurred in the backcourt, etc. If a team's second infraction is by a defensive player, the same principles for stopping play apply as we saw on the previous slide. The team on offense should not be penalized for the defense's infraction. Play should be allowed to continue until the offense scores or until the defense offending team secures control of the ball. A team technical is assessed, and the offended team is awarded 2 free throws with the lane spaces cleared, plus the ball for a division line throw-in opposite the table. When the faking being fouled rule is applied correctly and consistently, Rule 449 serves as an effective deterrent to unsporting behavior. Proper adjudication helps ensure that players, coaches, and spectators clearly understand how such violations will be addressed, reinforcing the importance of integrity in gameplay. We wish to thank you for watching this video. We hope the information IBO has provided will help you have a successful basketball season. If you have any questions about IBO, please contact the office at 717-713-8129 or visit the website at www.ibo.org. Have a great season.